Welcome back, college football games. While you are watching this, it is officially less than 24 hours away from the first game of the college football season, week 0. And on that note, what a week it's been for college football fans. Last week and a half, Johnny Manziel documentary, Bishop Sycamore documentary coming out.
Bishop Sycamore came out on Wednesday.
Okay, so it's already come out. The Florida Gators Swamp King documentary. And today, probably the most important news of the college football season, a Big Ten, Pac-12, Big 12 mega conference preview dropped by yours truly, two guys, one Mike, Connor Bailey.
I'm Cannon Gerald.
And today we're covering Big Ten, Big 12, Pac-12 conferences. We're just going to cover conference championship predictions, most approved sleeper teams, and then the playoff record. We'll jump into the Big Ten here.
Yep.
So Big Ten made a lot of noise 2 off seasons ago and this past off season responding to SEC's conference expansion. You had the addition of USC and UCLA 2 off seasons ago, and then Oregon and Washington this past off season. You've seen a shakeup at the top of the power hierarchy in the Big Ten. You've got Penn State trying to make themselves a true Tier 1 team. You've had Michigan kind of take over the top, beating Ohio State the past 2 years, winning the Big Ten back-to-back. So there's a lot of drama there. And then you have the Big Ten West, which has just been a complete firestorm of a division. You haven't had a back-to-back champion since the creation of the Big Ten West, or a repeat back-to-back champion. And since 2014, which is when the Big Ten had turned into what it was today, they are 0-9 in conference championship games. Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State have been the winner every year. So big year for that. Who's your conference championship prediction on that note?
Right now I got Michigan over Wisconsin. Like
Okay.
you said, the power in the Big Ten is in a weird spot right now. We've been kind of used to Ohio State dominating. You know, they just won 7 straight before
Right.
this. So I think Michigan will be firing all cylinders. Kind of think the Harbaugh suspension is a little bit, comical. Those first 3 games are probably the 3 easiest games Michigan can have drawn up.
They're rotating coaches. That's
yeah.
how seriously they're taking it.
They got 4 coaches coaching through 3 games. I think Jack Harbaugh, Jim's dad, might actually be helping assistant head coach some of those games. I think I read somewhere it's a little bit of a joke, but I expect Michigan to fire on all cylinders. They're returning one of the best quarterbacks in the nation in J.J. McCarthy, one of the best running backs and running back rooms in the country.
Probably the best running back room.
Yeah, I would say. I expect them to, be right back in the playoffs potentially. Definitely have a shot at it. When you're looking at Michigan, you just kind of circle those Penn State, Ohio State games as of lately. Michigan State can kind of be tricky. They beat them a year or 2 ago. So it'll be interesting. And then in the West, I kind of think Wisconsin will take it.
Okay.
I think the Luke Fickell hire was probably the best head coaching hire of the offseason. I think he's looking to get Wisconsin into a place where they really haven't been offensively lately. The years where they had the running backs that were breaking single game records week in, week out. Defense has kind of been solid, but I think Wisconsin has a real chance to kind of make an impact on the last normal season of the Big Ten. I think that we'll see. I think it'll be interesting. Good game.
Yeah, so I know we talked about Wisconsin before, and I'm a really big Wisconsin with Luke Fickell guy, but I went a completely different direction, last second decision with both divisions. I've got Penn State over Iowa.
Okay.
I really feel like for the Iowa-Wisconsin game, that's one of the biggest games in the Big Ten because I think that game will decide the division. I love the moves Luke Fickell made in the portal this offseason. He brought in Tanner Mordecai to pair with Braylon Allen. He put some transfers together in the receiving core and on the defense. But I think with the transition of play that we're about to see Wisconsin do, traditionally they've been a ball-dominant, run-heavy team. I don't know if they have the weapons there to compete. And I look at Phil Parker, who is the most tenured defensive coordinator in the country and, in my opinion, the best defensive coordinator in the country. I don't think it's enough to beat Iowa. I think their offense sees marginal improvement, and I think that's all Iowa really needs offensively is marginal improvement. You got Cade McNamara coming in at QB from the transfer portal from the Michigan Wolverines. Penn State, I think this is their year. You've got Nick Singleton and probably a top 3 running back duo in the country as well.
You could honestly make the argument that the top 3 running back rooms in the country are the top 3 running backs in the Big Ten East.
Yeah.
It's kind of ridiculous how deep those rooms are.
Yeah, they are deep and they're fast, talented running backs. You've got Michigan's probably got 2 first-round talented running backs. Penn State's got at least one, maybe two. Drew Lar taking over. Questions at receiver for him, but the defense, I mean, you've got Chop Robinson, you got Kalen King, you got a loaded linebacker room. This is Penn State's year for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Can't spoil playoff predictions, but
if they're going to get it done in a year, I think it has to be this year.
It has to be this year, yeah.
Because you have to, with this realignment, I think, you have to really make your mark on the conference before you add four powerhouses.
Yeah.
You're adding two teams that have already been to the college football playoffs before you, and adding a Heisman winning, like last season Heisman winning quarterback, and a coach that's been to the college football playoffs multiple times in Lincoln Riley and USC. I mean, UCLA's the brand, but you got to think if you don't make something happen, Penn State, on a national basis this year, there's a chance they get left behind.
Yeah, it's a big year for James Franklin and Penn State. So with that, 4 teams coming in, whose team is the most approved for you this year, heading into next year?
Heading into this year, I got Ohio State.
Okay.
And it kind of is big on the rivalry. I mean, it's normal for you not to beat your rival every single year. There's no team that completely just thrashes year in and year out.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see a little bit of parity, but I mean, it's the game. It's literally called the game.
Yeah.
You got a couple questions. Ryan Day's been there. He's a missed field goal away from a national championship last year.
Probably, yeah, a win for sure.
But it's just not good being the Ohio State coach losing to Michigan 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
They hadn't lost to Michigan 3 years in a row since 95, 97. You're Ohio State. You're used to winning national championships with Urban Meyer. It's just kind of a culture that I don't know if he's necessarily right for in terms of executing the best out of the most talented roster in the country. It's really hard to say that Big Ten championships, which they haven't made in the last 2 years, but 12, 13-win seasons, college football playoff berths, it's hard to say that that's not enough.
But for Ohio State,
when you're coaching a program at Ohio State,
yeah.
it'll be 10 years next year since our last national championship. The first college football playoff year. I just think that it's time to kind of put the money where the mouth is for Ohio State, and I think this year, you got teams like Penn State, you got teams like Michigan that are taking over all the spotlight. You have the probably best player in the nation in Marvin Harrison Jr., and they're another team where you got USC, Oregon, Washington, UCLA coming in, and they're hungry. I mean, Ohio State's the biggest brand, one of the biggest brands in college football. I think biggest target on their back. They just have a lot to prove, in my opinion.
Yeah. I do agree with that. I went with a different team, Michigan State. I'm going to come back to Ohio State after this. I went with Michigan State because over Ohio State has the resources to get whoever they want whenever they want as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
So even a disastrous season this year, they're still going to be a top 3 most sought-after job in the country, and they're going to be able to get the biggest names in the market. I went with Michigan State because, we talked about 4 new teams coming in next year. They have to decide who they're going to be with Mel Tucker this year. It's hard to win consistently at an elite level in the East Lansing. Mark D'Antonio did it, but even he didn't really do it at an elite level.
Yeah.
They had a pop season here and there. I do like Mel Tucker a lot. I think he's a really good coach. He very briefly rebuilt Colorado before going to Michigan State. We saw it 2 years ago, the magic they can have in East Lansing in the run game. They had a good enough defense, a good enough passing game. They lose their quarterback to Auburn, Peyton Thorne. They lose 6'7" Keon Coleman to Florida State late in the transfer portal. They lose Jaden Reed to the NFL draft. So there are a lot of questions on offense. Last year they had a terrible running game, terrible offensive line play, and defensively, it looked like they were playing JV level high school football for most of the year.
It's almost concerning, too, how much they just paid Mel Tucker.
Yeah, they've got a huge contract for Mel Tucker. So if it's not this year, can Michigan State even get out of that? You've got 4 new teams coming in. They need at least a 7 or 8 win season to really, feel good about heading into next year and not fall behind in a Big Ten that is just rapidly expanding in the arms race. But I do want to go back to what you said about Ohio State. Kind of a hot take segment here. Ohio State could be a 4-loss team.
I agree with that 100%. I mean, you can go ahead and chalk up a loss for Michigan, I think, personally.
Yeah, I think Michigan wins that game.
I'm honestly kind of on the wave lately where I think Drew Lar and Penn State are going to go in there. See, the big thing with Ohio State that makes me wonder is obviously they have Marvin Harrison Jr., best wide receiver, best probably player in the country. They have TreVeyon Henderson, I think is a dark horse Heisman favorite. But, I mean, Ohio State's kind of, especially lately, been really built on having an elite quarterback. And, you got to imagine whatever 5-star they have back there that's going to put on the Cardinal red or whatever is going to be amazing. But, I mean, hearing reports that Ryan Day is literally having to ask his staff who they think should start and it's split right down the middle isn't a good sign on any means. It doesn't matter how far you're talented. Talent can take you in college football. Success is built on your team working as a well-oiled machine. And I think a little bit of quarterback conflict isn't good going into the regular season. I don't think it works for a lot of teams, if any, that try to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that they have a lot of question
marks.
Yeah,
I usually don't like the saying if you have 2 quarterbacks or if you have 3 quarterbacks, you have none. But I am worried about the QB room. Kyle McCord was kind of the expected starter, and reports out of camp is Devin Brown might end up getting that job. He's outplaying him. And in this case, that's concerning to me. I do think Ryan Day gets 100% of the benefit of the doubt because he's done it year in and year out. He had Dwayne Haskins. He's done it with Justin Fields. He has C.J. Stroud. He's got a proven track record at the QB department and in developing the QB room. But they do have elite receiver play to help a quarterback transition. But like Cannon said, their offense is so predicated on elite QB play. I think you kind of look at Clemson the last 2 years when they haven't had QB play, elite QB play. They were very successful under Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson and
even Kelly Bryant made the playoffs.
Yeah, Kelly Bryant made the playoffs. I don't chalk up all of the unsuccess to DJ, but there were QB issues there that slowed down that offense. And so that has me worried for Ohio State. You said Penn State, Michigan. I don't know if they're physical enough to beat Notre Dame on the road. And then, they play Wisconsin on the road.
Yep.
They have a bunch of just scrappy teams that they play throughout the year.
I know. I think it's week 9 or week 10. I think they have to go to New Jersey, and I think Marvin Harrison Jr. will really get his first kind of test there, at cornerback. Robert Longerbeam. Another
cornerback out of the
DMV.
He had 4 or 5 picks last year.
He's an elite. I don't know.
He's an elite corner. He's probably the most slept on in the country.
I would say.
He's got first-round physical traits.
Yep.
Can he put together a full, complete season this year? We'll see. On that note, talking about some teams that can beat guys like Ohio State, Michigan, sleeper teams. I've got a pretty easy one. I was debating between 2, Maryland and Illinois. I went with Illinois.
Okay.
So they got Luke Altmaier at QB. They had a decent year offensively last year. They were almost in the Big Ten championship. They kind of fell through late in the season. They lose their DC to Purdue. In my opinion, one of the better defensive coordinators in the country. He developed Devon Witherspoon. Illinois had a top 5 pick in the draft.
Yeah.
Defensively, they had another corner going like the 2nd or 3rd round. They've got probably another top 10 player in the draft this year on the D-line. And they're pretty deep at a lot of defensive positions. They play a plethora of top teams in the Big Ten. They have Wisconsin at home. They go on the road to Iowa. They play Penn State. And that Penn State game is week 3. It'll be Drew Allar's first road test. Illinois, not really known for a home crowd, but with a top 10 team coming in.
And you'd have to imagine the fans are going to be there.
Basically a rookie quarterback coming in. That's a game prime for upset potential. That's who my sleeper team is.
For my sleeper team, I think we were on the same wave with the Wisconsin-Iowa. I went Iowa for my sleeper team. I think, like you said, that matchup they have is probably the most important, probably the most impactful game in the Big Ten all year.
Yeah.
Honestly, I just kind of think Iowa's at a funny situation. Like you mentioned that you only think they need marginal kind of tweaks on the offense, and I agree with that. I just think it's never been so public, their offensive coordinator having such an incentive-based contract where I think it's $25,000 to $50,000 for every time they score over 25 points. Yeah. And, I mean, like you said, ESPN had them ranked as the second to last total defense in college football last year. I think if they can score, 25, 30 points a game, it's hard to find 4 losses on this schedule.
You look back at the Ohio State game last year, and you can look at the final score all you want, but that final score was not indicative of the game at all. Iowa's defense scored more than their offense did.
I think they have a lot of schedule factors going their way. I mean, they go to Penn State, and then having Michigan State the next week isn't fun, but like I said, they don't really have to play Ohio State this year. They don't really have to play Michigan. I think you win 1 out of 2 of those games from the West Conference, you're kind of just, I think, priming up for an all-time showdown versus Wisconsin to go to Lucas Oil.
Yeah. I've got Purdue. I just talked about Ryan Walters. For playoff record, sorry. Yeah, playoff record. I've got Purdue. Ryan Walters, a top rising candidate in the head coaching market. I think Purdue has a chance to be really special in football if they have the right guy there. I think Ryan Walters could be the right guy.
Drew Brees working for the quarterback.
Yeah, Drew Brees is an analyst in the Purdue football program. What I like about Purdue football this year is it starts with their out-of-conference schedule. They may go 0-3. They play Fresno State, road Virginia Tech, home Syracuse, and they could be 3-0, but they're going to get tested in all 3 of those games before they jump into Big Ten play. They get Wisconsin at home to open up Big Ten play. They get Illinois at home. They have Rhode Iowa, but they play Ohio State and Michigan out of the Big Ten East.
They get Ohio State at home.
Yeah.
That is a brutal schedule to start to.
Yeah, they have probably the hardest Big Ten schedule.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah. There's definitely questions offensively losing Jeff Brom, but Jeff Brom didn't just leave him depleted.
No, not at all.
Especially in the offensive side of things. And I just talked about what Ryan Walters did at Illinois, developing defensive talent. I have to imagine they'll get at least a little bit of improvement on the defensive side of the ball this year. They have tons of opportunities to do it. Purdue is my biggest playoff spoiler for the Big Ten.
For me, I'm going to go Maryland. I'm a big quarterback guy. When you have the school's all-time leading passer come back for a full another year, a guy that in the offseason apparently declined $1 million offers to go to unnamed SEC programs. It just kind of shows me you have a guy that's really bought into the program, and I think he's going to go in there week in, week out, play hard. You saw in the game last year, Maryland played Ohio State to about 3 quarters.
Yep.
A little bit of fortune goes Ohio State's way in that 4th quarter. They get out of there. They get Penn State and Michigan at home. Me, I'm a big chances to be a playoff record team. They go to Columbus, which obviously isn't easy, but they played them close last time. I just think that, Maryland has a chance to kind of sneakily catch one of these teams asleep, especially with it being at home. That Maryland crowd has been kind of underrated, I would say.
Yeah, they got a good home crowd.
So I think they put themselves at the best possible spot to make some noise.
I like that. Yeah, Talia is definitely an underrated QB since last year. They've got a experienced offense from top to bottom, experienced defense. We saw what they did against NC State. That was one of my favorite bowls to watch.
Yeah.
Because I felt like NC State could have won it at any moment, and Maryland just didn't let them.
Nope. Yep.
It wasn't necessarily even bad football from NC State. It was just good football from Maryland. And I think if you put Maryland in the ACC, Big 12, Pac-12, they'd be a top 4 to 6 team, depending on how some of their close games fell. So that's our Big Ten preview. Really big year for the top teams. Really big year from some of the middle teams. We didn't even talk about Nebraska and Matt Rule. Big year for him as well. Don't think he has lightning fast immediate success. Probably a bowl team. Next conference we cover is the Big 12. So SEC, Big Ten, arms race. Big 12 just kind of sat there and let teams fall at then.
I agree. They reloaded. They weren't. Big 12 is probably the only conference so far that hasn't been looking at strictly football.
Yeah.
The Big 12
They're
and basketball.
They're baseball too.
Everything's just going to be insane. The Big 12 is probably going to become the new athletic power conference.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to, it's hard not to mention football in there, but I mean, they're loaded.
They've got 4 teams from the Final Four over the past 2 years in their conference now. They've got multiple baseball World Series appearances, or teams with appearances in their conference. Basketball. Going back to basketball, they're just gonna be top to down loaded. It's by far the best or basketball conference in football.
I think they're the most interesting conference.
Yeah,
they're the
100%.
most what if.
Yeah, this year too. Most what if. There's just I had a hard time picking sleeper teams.
Mm-hmm.
Their whole conference, besides Texas and Oklahoma, is a sleeper team.
I agree.
So I've got Texas winning the Big 12.
I also have Texas. I think you could go on and on about Texas. Probably the best quarterback room in the country. Weapons all around crazy.
That receiving core second.
You got to think they got an important game against Alabama, but from a conference standpoint, you go to Tuscaloosa, lose, your season's not even close to being over. You go in there and win, then you've already blown everyone's expectations out the water and just have confidence moving on.
Yeah, and you're just playing.
Another big thing about Texas is, besides the game in Alabama, I don't think they leave the state of Texas.
They do once. It's Iowa State on the road.
Okay, so they have Iowa State. They go to, where does Iowa State play?
Ames, Iowa.
Ames, Iowa.
It's a late season game. That's a sleeper
game. That is a tough game. But I mean, the rest of their road games, Oklahoma and Dallas, TCU. You know what I mean? It's Texas Tech. It's just a very lucky thing that I guess Texas gets.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you could go on and on about Texas. I think this is the year that they're finally back. I see no reason why they shouldn't be. It's going to be kind of tough, but the team that I have Texas beating
this is a crazy one
in my Big 12 is Central Florida.
Yeah, so I need you to explain this.
Yeah, so first year in the Big 12, I think Gus Malzahn is a great coach. Okay. I really do. I think their schedule kind of benefits them in ways where if they get up and motivated to play, I think Central Florida is going to be in about every game they play. You got Kent State. Boise State week 2 is not exactly an easy game, but I think it's a winnable game at home. Then you got Villanova. That's 3-0 in my book. Then you get Kansas State at home after Kansas State's second and third week is Troy, and then a Missouri road game. And I don't think a Missouri road game is going to be as easy for Kansas State as they might imagine. No. I think going to the road to play any SEC team's not fun.
Yeah.
They get Baylor after that, but they get Baylor the week after Baylor plays Texas. So you're looking at potentially another super banged up team.
Yeah.
Then you get Kansas at home. You got to bye Oklahoma at home, and then you got 2 games in West Virginia and Cincinnati. I'm looking at potentially 1-2 losses max there. Last 3 weeks of the season really decide though. They have Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Houston. I don't think Houston's going to be very good, so I think they obviously win that game. But Oklahoma State and Texas Tech are 2 teams that you don't really want to see on your schedule anyway, especially not late season. But I mean, if Central Florida overextends what they're expected to do and beats Oklahoma, you know what I mean? At that point, you got maybe a loss to Baylor, Kansas State going into Oklahoma. You beat an Oklahoma team that might just not be there yet. Because I think Oklahoma's obviously incredible program, but I think when you have an entire culture change, going from Lincoln Riley, probably one of the best offensive minds, especially from the quarterback perspective, probably the past couple of decades in college football, to Brent Venables, the complete opposite, a defensive mind coach. I don't think that people realize it takes time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that, like I said, the Big 12 is the most interesting conference to me to look out for this year. I think that you have teams that can make noise even when they shouldn't. If you bet, I think Central Florida right now is plus 3,000 odds to win the conference, so could be worth it.
Yeah, I've got Texas over Texas Tech. I love Texas Tech football. Lubbock, Texas. I think Joe McGuire is quickly making himself into a premier name on the market, and I think he will stay at Texas Tech. He loves the program there and culture that he's building there. They got Tyler Show at quarterback. In games that Tyler Show started and finished last year, they went 8-0. They beat Texas last year, 37-34. I know Texas had injuries. I don't really like injuries as an excuse.
I don't either.
Every team faces injuries. They have a pretty tough schedule. They play Texas in the last week of the season. I would not be surprised to see Texas Tech go 1-1 against Texas this year, in that regular season game, and then the Big 12 championship. They have a pretty gritty defense. They definitely need to see some improvement there, but they are recruiting at a level people don't really expect Texas Tech to recruit at. And in this year's class, they are favored for a 5-star receiver over Texas currently. So it's a big year in terms of, how much recruiting momentum can they get. but they have a very workable schedule. Um, their first true test in conference play is Kansas State, and it's at home. They get TCU off a bye, and then they have road Texas at the end of the season. I look at their out-of-conference schedule. It's road Wyoming. For some reason, they go to Wyoming. They have Tarleton State. Week 2, they play Oregon. That's really where we're going to see what Texas Tech can be. Not to spoil Week 2 picks, probably going to pick Texas Tech there.
That's fine, yeah.
I think Texas Tech is a really legit program. I think they're a year to 2 years away from being potentially a national playoff contender every year, especially with a 12-team playoff. And I would not be surprised to see Texas Tech potentially even spoil Texas' playoff chances this year. You have Oklahoma as your team with the most to prove, right?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just I guess I'm one that kind of overreacts. When teams have an abnormally bad year.
Yeah.
Being a Clemson fan, we're kind of used to hearing getting a little bit ridiculed for our past couple years. winning only 10 games and stuff like that. But I'm a Venables guy through and through.
Yeah.
Winning 6 games and losing a bowl game is not how you start at Oklahoma.
Red River shootout 49-0. You can't have that at Oklahoma.
No, it's just completely unacceptable, especially for a team, that's one of the 2 teams leaving to go to the SEC, maybe because, you think you're too big for the Big 12, you need to go to the SEC. I think that kind of puts a lot of unneeded stress and scrutiny on them because I think that the Big 12 teams that are staying are going to be coming out playing Oklahoma and Texas this year harder than they ever have. I don't think that they're going to get a single game where a team just is unmotivated to go out and play them. They got a top 2 team in the country in regards to blue chips, undeniable. It's them and Texas.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to. They got to go. Obviously, they got the Dallas Red River rivalry, but then they get Oklahoma State at home. TCU on the road could be tough, but I don't think TCU is going to be all that this year. But if you're Oklahoma, there's no reason not to be in every single game, if not win every single game this year.
Yeah.
Like I said before, I know culture challenges take long, but there's a difference in a culture change and a complete just mess up of a season. There's no situation why a team that was in the playoff less than 5 years ago should win 6 games.
Top 10 portal class, top 10 recruiting class, reload on defense. They've got pieces there.
It's just up to them to get it going. I stayed at Oklahoma for my sleeper team, though, but I went to Oklahoma State. I feel like every year, you kind of forget about them, and then probably week 7, week 8, you're like, oh, Mike Gundy has one loss.
Yeah.
And you're looking at them as a team that made the Big 12 championship 2 years ago, was probably about 3 inches from not winning it.
Yeah.
On the last play.
3 inches from not making a playoff.
Yeah. They have a couple. Their schedule's pretty easy. It's pretty backloaded. Another team you really learn about in the month of November. But it's a team built on year in and year out overachieving, and I think they're ranked in the AP poll this year, right? I think anywhere from, or was it Oregon State? I might be thinking about.
Oregon State is.
Oregon State is. So Oklahoma State's not, but I just kind of think every year you can't count Mike Gundy out. He's going to prove you wrong.
I've got them as my most approved team. Last year they won 6 games, disastrous into the season. They were 7-0 at one, or 6-0 at one point, and then just fell off. They have major question marks at QB. A lot of people say that they're just done for as a program because of all the talent they lost in the portal. They lose Mason Cobb. They lose Spencer Sanders at QB to Ole Miss. Mason Cobb went to Southern Cal. But the feeling I get from reading articles from Oklahoma State insiders is, they lost some big names, but overall they actually got more talented. They landed some big guys on the defensive line. And I look at them as the most approved this year with Texas and Oklahoma leaving for next year. That's just a massive gap at the top where teams have a chance to really place themselves there. Oklahoma State has every ability to do it. I don't think they recruit at a high enough level to be a national contender every year, especially with the way teams in the Big 12 are recruiting right now. But for, if they have a good season, a good bounce back year, they could put themselves early in the top of the new load Big 12. Sleeper team, I've got Iowa State. Matt Campbell, top 15 head coach. He was a top 10 head coach for me at one point. Probably fallen down a couple spots, 2 off years, but you also have to realize he's at Iowa State.
Yeah.
He's completely turned around Iowa State's program and got them in the Big 12. They were a Big 12 championship game away against Oklahoma from making the playoffs. Iowa State in the playoffs.
They beat the top 15 Iowa last year. In a down year.
Iowa State has pieces there. They're going to lose their QB most likely to start the season for gambling. So that sucks for them. But they have a 6'6" true freshman coming in. They've got pieces on offense, pieces on defense. It kind of just comes down to can they put it together. They play Texas at the end of the year. Ames, Iowa, not a fun place to play. Probably going to be cold.
Yep.
Probably bitter conditions.
Probably windy.
Yeah, probably windy. I just looked at it as a favorable game. I think there's pieces there. I think Matt Campbell's an elite head coach, and that is my sleeper team. They're not my playoff record, though.
Okay.
Who was your playoff record?
I went with Texas Tech. I think you touched on it very well earlier, and for all of those reasons plus more. But what it comes down to is they play Oregon in a top 3 out-of-conference game of the year, and then they get Texas robbery week.
Yep.
I just think that I'm kind of with you. I don't see them going 0-2 in those games the way I feel about Texas Tech right now. I feel like they have one of the best chances in the country for a team that is. Are they ranked right now? No.
Yeah, they are.
They are? What are they?
I want to say they just snuck in the top 20.
Like it was 23 or something like that, 22
Actually,
maybe?
you know what? They might not have been ranked. Yeah, they're not ranked to start the season,
so
which
they're
is crazy.
They're not ranked to start the season, and I would probably give them the best chance of any unranked team to be a potential playoff team this year. Through in and throughout, they are a great roster. Obviously, Connor had them in his conference championship game, and I think they're good enough to get there. I really do. I just don't know if they're a complete enough program yet that can put together 12 good games.
Yeah, I agree.
I have all the confidence in the world that they can put together one really, really good game and win one of those really important games. But when you're a team that's not really built on having a lot of national success, I feel like it's harder to be motivated week in and week out. And that's kind of where my worries lie, why I just put them as a playoff record, but I think they're as good of a playoff record as any team in the country.
Yeah, I agree. Putting together a full season then would be their biggest challenge. I've got BYU, Brigham Young as my playoff record. Again, it comes down to chances for me. They get a shot at pretty much the top teams in the Big 12, but it also comes down to QB play. I typically think a team with not even necessarily an elite QB, but a QB who can have an elite game.
Yeah, and a competent quarterback.
Yeah, they have a chance to win a game against a top team. I saw it last year with Arizona against UCLA. BYU has Kadon Slovis. Not necessarily a QB that comes to your mind with that description, but that's why people transfer to start at new schools, get a new chance. And
it's one of the narratives that I've grown to appreciate more. Especially with I think the Graham Mertz in Florida really opened my eyes how negatively their performance at past colleges was. Joe Burrow didn't play at Ohio State, had the greatest statistical season ever.
Michael Penix at Washington now.
Hendon Hooker at Virginia Tech. I just think, if we're going to use the transfer portal as frequently as we do, we have to be able to give these players a clean slate.
Exactly. People aren't even giving DJ a chance, which I'll give to him in our Pac-12
segment. In our Pac-12, I will too.
But yeah, Kedon Slovis, he's played at a million schools, it seems like, but he just needs one game to pull off an upset. He needs to have one game where he just plays out of his mind. And I think with the chances that he has, and I don't want to say weapons around him because it's not like BYU has an elite core, but Kalani Sitake has built BYU into a quietly pretty solid program.
Mm-hmm.
They've been there in the past, was it COVID year? They played Coastal in a top 15 matchup.
Yeah, Thursday night.
Zach Wilson, yeah. So, he's had talent there. He's coached some big time players. It just comes down to one game. They played Texas. I think they played Texas on the road.
I think Slovis's biggest thing is when he lost to QB1, I don't think he's really had a team that's bought into him 100% yet. And from what I've been seeing, it seems like BYU's bought into him pretty well.
I imagine he'll be the starter.
Yeah. So I think he'll be all right.
Yeah. So that covers our Big 12 conference there. Probably the most deep conference from top to bottom. The next conference we're going to cover is the Pac-12. And I think, crazy take, this could end up being the best conference in the country.
Agreed 100%.
I think the top 6 all have a chance, or preseason odds, all have a chance to win the conference. and I think the top 8 to 10 all have a chance to pull off an upset. It's a conference that's going to get overshadowed because there very well could be a team that does not make the playoffs from the Pac-12, but it's not because of lack of talent. It's because they just cannibalize themselves.
Yeah, they're going to eat each other alive. Probably the best quarterback play from a conference.
Yeah, it's the best quarterback conference in the country. I don't think there's any debating that. It starts with Caleb Williams, but you have Michael Penix, who probably should have been in New York last year.
Bo Nix, who's a New York
probably
hopeful.
Will be in New York this year.
DJU.
Yeah, DJU trying to bounce back at Oregon State. You've got a QB competition at UCLA with a 5-star QB and 2 transfers. You've got Jaden Delar at Arizona. You've got
Who's
Utah.
For Utah right now?
Is it Cam Rising? It's
Cam Rising
still.
Yeah, still.
The Hunter Renfro of Utah, just been there for forever. They're just loaded at quarterback or play from top to bottom. And you've got Jaden Rashada at Arizona State, a 5-star with Kenny Dillingham. So there's just so many chances for upsets. It's going to be a super exciting conference to watch this year. Unfortunately, it'll be the last year we watch Pac-12 football. I imagine the last 4 schools will find a new home before the start of next year.
And the way it is looking now on August the 25th, 2023, it's looking like it's going to be the ACC.
At least for 2 of them. Maybe the Mountain West can get Oregon State and Washington State. So it's kind of fitting that, this is the best year of Pac-12 football we're going to see probably since the start of the college football playoff era. Kind of also sucks that this is probably going to be the best year of Pac-12 football that we see. With that being said, conference championship, I'm going to go with a rematch of the Week 12 Civil War, Oregon over Oregon State. I think Oregon is the truth this year with Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is a legitimate shot to be a first-round QB. And I think Oregon State, they won 10 games last year,
10 games.
including a just thrashing of Florida in their bowl game, and nobody talks about it at all. They have a very good run game. They have a top 10 offensive line in the country. They have a defense that has the talent there. They almost beat USC last year. I think they held Southern Cal to 17 points. So they've got all the pieces there. Corvallis, not necessarily a fun place to play, a really underrated home stadium. DJU has a bounce back year at Oregon State under a new coach, new scheme, new roster. There's no reason Oregon State can't even win the Pac-12.
Agreed. I went with USC over Washington.
Okay.
USC is pretty easy.
Yeah.
Too talented not to be there. Spoiler alert, but they're also my team with the most on the line. And I'm just going to say it just because too talented not to be there, and I don't think you can say it enough.
Yeah.
We touched on Lincoln Riley earlier, one of the most offensively great minds of college football in history probably. You have what's being called the greatest quarterback prospect ever.
Which is crazy in my opinion.
Every year it's the best quarterback prospect ever, but maybe I'm just salty because I was big on Trevor.
Yeah.
You got 5-star recruit after 5-star recruit. You're not even necessarily super weak everywhere, but with the transfer portal, you fill out and make every single roster spot every position group almost seems like there's 4 or 5 guys that can stand up and be starters at Power 5 schools. Jaheim Bell went to Florida State. I'm thinking of Marshawn Lloyd. They got the wide receiver. I forget the wide receiver that they got, but
Malachi something, 5-star from somewhere in California. I can't remember his last name.
Malachi Nelson. Yeah, Malachi Nelson. So they get Malachi Nelson. Too many excuses not to be there. Just plain and simple. Washington, the Pac-12 Conference Championship game is very hard to pick for me. I know I kind of wanted one of the bigger teams in there, but the schedule for every single Pac-12 team just is not ideal. I think the Pac-12 did the best job this year, too, with scheduling these out-of-conference games.
Mm-hmm.
Really gets teams you would hope prepared for the conference games. The decision maker for me is I think Michael Penix is just a game changer, and I think in a conference like the Pac-12, a game changer is not all you need, but it can take you a lot farther than other conferences.
Yeah.
And Washington's front half of their schedule is pretty easy, and then after they get a bye, they get Oregon, and then they get USC. But I think they got 6-7 weeks before they even have that, so I think they're going to be at a really good place to where they could potentially just dominate through the back half of their schedule.
Yeah, I did have a hard time not picking Washington. I think Penix is an elite QB. I think they have a top 5 receiver room in the country. Probably 2 first-round picks in the receiving room. I went with USC as my most approved too, and I agree 100%. They have too much talent not to be there. I just look back at Lincoln Riley's past teams, and I see the same question mark there from his first year at Oklahoma to now his second year at USC, and that's what can their defense do? What will the defense be? They did make big improvements on paper in the portal. Mason Cobb, they go out and get DB. They go out and get some more defensive line. They get Barry Alexander from Georgia.
Yeah.
So on paper, yeah, they should be better, but we don't play games on paper.
Nope.
That's always going to be my biggest question mark with Lincoln Riley's teams. I do think Lincoln Riley has every ability to win a national championship. I just think he needs a top 50 defense to do it. I don't know if they have a top 50 defense this year. If they do, look out college football.
It's also kind of frustrating because it's almost like you really feel like they needed that defense to show up in maybe 3 games. The defense did show up in the game you were talking about with Oregon State. But those 2 games versus Utah, man, it's like you need one stop and you win the game, it feels like. Even in the bowl game versus Tulane.
I mean, people always say, well, Caleb Williams couldn't beat Tulane. What more do you want Caleb Williams to do? He threw for over 400 yards. He put up, I don't know how many, it was 40-something points.
I mean, props to Caleb Williams for even playing.
Yeah,
I don't really know how many sophomore quarterbacks that are the first-year number 1 pick in their respected draft class are playing in the Cotton Bowl against Tulane.
Yeah. I liked your comment earlier about Caleb Williams being like a generational prospect. I don't think he's a generational prospect. No. I think you got to be careful with that word. But Caleb Williams is by far the number 1 pick in the draft.
Yep.
Looking like Arizona Cardinals are tanking for him right now.
It's looking like it, but I mean, it's also looking like I'm kind of on the wave too, where I'm a little anti Caleb Williams right now because he's just been hating a lot, a little bit too much for my liking. For like a player of his caliber, he's telling EA he potentially doesn't want to be in the game, which is ridiculous. He's telling NFL execs that he might stay another year if which I think is kind of just probably a tactic to get the media off his back so he can focus on his what should be last season at USC.
Yeah.
Not really get the same questions over and over again, but I just still kind of think that's an answer you never give. We'll see.
Yeah, it's a big year for Lincoln Riley, especially as he's about to go to the Big Ten. I've got USC's big rival as the sleeper team, UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're 6th in odds right now. I think Oregon State just jumped them to win the Pac-12. And I just feel like nobody's really talking about Chip Kelly and the Bruins. They're losing Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who is just destroying it in NFL preseason right now. They added a quarterback. Maybe I can't remember if they added a quarterback in the portal or added 2. I know they added at least 1. It might have been a backup they already had. But then they go out and steal Dante Moore from Oregon.
Yep.
Signing day flip and just came out of nowhere for UCLA. That's a massive recruiting battle. Chip Kelly's never been a recruiter.
Yeah.
He's won some big battles.
Yeah.
But with the way that college football is going in the portal, UCLA could put themselves in the top, just filling in pieces when they need it. They're always going to have a good offense. I think last year was their most complete team. They were in the playoff conversation up until the Arizona game. And, Jaden DeLara just made it play after play, and they literally could not stop him. And that's not a UCLA issue. That's just the fact that Jaden DeLara just had a great game. And I think, that's one reason Pac-12 might end up being screwed this year because they have so many quarterbacks that can do that. They play all the top teams in the Pac-12, so that hurts UCLA's chances here. But if the quarterback situation figures itself out, they have a great underrated running back duo to kind of takes the load off of whoever their quarterback ends up being. I think Chip Kelly could find himself in the last Pac-12 championship game.
Yep. I could see that a lot. I think just these LA teams, bro, it's never going to be easy to coach a college football team in Los Angeles. Too many distractions. It's too,
NIL now, too. But
it's just too hard, I think, for the players to stay focused about 100% football. But, I hope they can. My sleeper team, I went Oregon State. Kind of same thing as you, dude. It's another team that kind of resembles Oklahoma State, and I feel like they're always overachieving. The Civil War is always one of the best rivalry games of the year. I feel like it's never a blowout.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm tuning in at Pac-12 After Dark to watch Oregon State attempt a field goal to beat Oregon every single year. I think their offense is going to be amazing. From what I'm hearing, they're going to run strictly air raid, letting DJ be the gunslinger that I think he is, and I think DJ could somehow wind his happy butt up in New York if he plays to the maximum of his ability. they don't play Southern Cal and they get Washington super late in the season too. I think that's a benefit towards them.
Yeah.
I think they just have a lot going their way, and they're a team that you should watch out for.
Jonathan
for sure.
Smith, one of the most fastest rising head coaches in the country.
Yeah.
He's an Oregon State guy, so I don't know what happens with Oregon State and their future conference. Hopefully they can find themselves in a way to stay. Maybe Big 12 comes calling. Maybe the ACC ends up getting them. Hopefully they can stay in an elite conference, because I definitely think Jonathan Smith is and has a chance to build something really special at Oregon State. My playoff spoiler is the Arizona Wildcats, and I've already mentioned it. It's Jaden DeLara. Jedd Fisch has them recruiting at an elite level Arizona's never seen. They've landed last year the biggest recruit in Arizona history at wide receiver, 5-star receiver. This year he topped that by landing a 5-star defensive lineman / kind of light linebacker. They've got weapons. They did some good things in the portal. I also thought about Cal here. They did some good things in the portal as well. But Arizona takes the cake for me for my playoff spoiler with Jaden DeLara. I think he's a really special college quarterback. He reminds me a lot of like Tajh Boyd. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily a quarterback I think will succeed in the NFL, just because his arm talent isn't necessarily consistent. But he just makes plays, and he makes a lot of them every single game. And they have a lot of chances as well. That's kind of been the recurring theme for us. They get Washington home early in the season. They go road USC. They get Oregon State at home. They get UCLA at home. They get Utah at home. So you want to talk about a sleeper team too. All those home games adding up. Arizona could find themselves up there. Leaving for the Big 12 next year. They've got a really big chance to make a statement this year in their last year of Pac-12 play.
Yeah, I went a different direction. I went one of the teams that probably hasn't been given the respect they deserve as like a complete athletic department and all this, relocation and stuff, and that's Stanford.
Yeah.
Stanford was regarded as an elite program not too long ago, and they have a lot of chances, which, like you said, we're big on. They start the season with Hawaii, and then they get, Southern Cal, and, I think Southern Cal will definitely handle the business in week 2 of the regular season, but you still don't want to see a team like Stanford, in my opinion, super early on. They get Oregon after Oregon has to go Texas Tech, Hawaii, Colorado, 2 of those games on the road, so I don't necessarily think that's ideal for Oregon. They get a bye, and then they play Colorado, which, who knows what Prom's going to have Colorado looking like this year.
Yeah.
Then they get UCLA and Washington at home, but that Washington game that they get at home is the week before Washington takes on Southern California. So Washington, you could potentially catch them sleeping ahead. Obviously Washington State should be pretty easy. Oregon State on the road is going to be tough. Then you finish up the year with the tough Cal game and then Notre Dame.
Yeah.
You get another chance to spoil another team's playoff hopes, and I think that Stanford's always a pretty well-coached team regardless of what the talent is, and I think that they have a legitimate chance, like a lot of teams in the Pac-12, to end some seasons. Like we mentioned several times before, this Pac-12 conference is just so deep this year that you probably could have thrown a dartboard at the screen and pick a playoff record.
Conference championship team, a spoiler.
I mean, you don't even know what Colorado is going to be.
I was just about to say, we need to talk about them. They go road TCU week 1. They get Nebraska. They go road.
Win.
What do you mean?
I'm just saying that's 2 wins.
Yeah. You're saying wins. Colorado State win. So I'm seeing a 3-0 start to the season going to Eugene, Oregon. I genuinely do think Colorado beats TCU week 1.
I do
think
too.
There's just so much
hype around the program.
Shadur, I think, is a really good QB.
Yep.
Travis Hunter, I think he'll be all Pac-12 at DB.
Yep.
Receiver, that I'm not too sure about, but he's going to be a really special 2-way player. He's probably going to be a 3-way player, really, because I imagine he's going to be their kick returner.
Special teams, yeah.
Shiloh Sanders. Colorado built one of the quietly best staffs in the country.
Yep.
They added a former head coach at Kent State, and he had Kent State kind of rolling a little bit to be their defensive coordinator. Or not even defensive coordinator, like defensive
analyst.
Yeah, defensive analyst. They get Charles Kelly from Alabama to be their defensive coordinator. Offensively, they get good coaches there too. People, I think it really comes down to people just want to hate on Deion because they don't want to see a guy rise so fast to the top. A lot of coaches kind of grind their way to the top. I think Deion is the truth at head coach. I think he has Colorado. He already has Colorado back in the playoff picture. Yep. They sold out every game this year already.
Yep. And this is a team that, you were seeing posts on social media and stuff like that. They weren't selling out sections at games last year.
Yeah. They won Deion wins 4 games this year. That's a 400% increase from last year.
Yeah.
So it's just a massive chance to there's a massive chance for Deion to do something really big. A 4-game season, in my opinion, 4-win season would be a success.
Schedule's brutal too.
Yeah, it's a brutal schedule. I'm looking at it right now. Road Oregon, home USC.
They don't get a break. Yeah. They don't get a break from week 4 until second to last week of the season, probably.
Yeah.
Besides their bye.
Yeah, that's a tough schedule.
It's a brutal schedule. Deion makes a bowl game. He's coach of the year in the nation. Just saying.
Yeah, 100%.
Amazing job what he's done there. I'm excited for Colorado.
Yeah, I don't know how you can quantify what he's done. He's pretty much. I don't think they have a single player, maybe 4 players from last year's team.
He's kind of done what me and Connor have said twice you can't do, and that's change a culture in a year. He's done that.
Yeah,
so
100%. He has a chance. You can just walk behind.
Yeah,
it's no worries. So.
Go Tigers.
Yeah, so Colorado, big team to watch this year. Just wanted to do a small little segment on Deion. I think that wraps up our conference previews. We got playoff predictions maybe dropping tonight as well.
Yeah.
We're also going to cover some G5 teams in that segment, pick our Heisman winners. I'm excited for this year football. I'm always going to be excited for college football, but with all the changes happening, I think I'm most excited for this year. I think there's so many question marks, and not in a bad way. I don't really see a preseason elite team. I think there's – I was trying to make a list of teams I could see making the playoffs and making the national championship, and I got down to it, and I was like, this is like 20 teams, 15 to 20 teams. And usually I don't think that's normal for a college football season.
I think there's definitely a opportunity for lesser teams to rise up. Yeah. I think that Georgia's going to rise to the top fast like they did last year.
Yeah.
Just a little sneak peek, but they got a cupcake schedule. I agree with you. I don't think there's an elite national championship favorite, and I think one of these 3 conferences that we covered today could very easily have one, if not multiple teams.
I think every conference we've covered has a chance to have a national championship winner at the end of the year. And to me, that's exciting. We're only going to have 4 conferences next year, and who knows what will happen with the ACC. It might only have 3 in 3 to 4 years.
Who knows what's even going to happen with the playoffs? Because with all this realignment stuff, they're going to have to re-examine it.
You have an automatic bid for the Pac-12 and the new 12-team playoffs. Obviously, that's not going to happen anymore. So, really big year for college football. For more traditionalist college football fans, enjoy it.
Yep, last year takes some getting used to after this.
Yeah, but that's our conference previews. Hope y'all enjoy watching. See y'all in the playoff prediction episode.